All right, thank you all for joining this morning. As we all know, this is a research, innovation, and commercialization project that is done in partnership with RISA and UKAID. So as part of the capacity building phase, this is organized, and today we are looking at how to license technology for industry. Today we have Emmanuel up here with us. He's the head of engineering, chief information security officer, and acting chief technology officer at Wiremoney. He has over 14 years of experience as a software engineer, corporate communications as a radio broadcaster, business news anchor, and talk show host. So we have him here with us. He's going to share on how to license technology for industry. Mr. Emmanuel, if you are here, I would like to hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Gloria. It's great to be here. Let me just do a quick mic check. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear
Great.
you. We
Yes,
can hear
please.
you.
Awesome. All right, cool. All right, great. So I guess that's it. We're going to do this. I mostly like to keep the class or the session or the group very lively and all. I'm not sure if I should come on video or not. I think because of probably internet issues and all, maybe I'll come on video a bit. And then at some point, depending on how the transmission is, I might turn my video off or it will still be ongoing. And of course, depending on those who joined and the impact on their video, because we've seen it's just what it is. When the video is not on and it's just sound, I think for all the other platforms, there's a certain level of quality in transmission. And when there's video too, you have a bit of an adjusted feed as well. So I think just to keep things a bit lively, I'm just gonna go on video. I just hope my video does not fail me. So all right, cool. So it's good to have you guys join. I just hope that I'm visible, like you can see me. Yeah. So I just really want to be sure. And if it's affecting your internet, just let me know. I can turn the video off anytime so we can do this. It's going to be a very more so a lively class. Might not be your probably typical TEDx presentation or any of the other presentations where you wait all the way to the end to ask questions. The idea is to make this very interactive. At any point in time, you feel free, like you can interject, you can say, oh, wait, but I think this, I heard this, I feel that, like, let's keep it very lively and just, get the best out of all of this. The session fundamentally is supposed to have been the usual presentation. We do it for, and I was given a time between 1100 GMT all the way up to 1300. The idea is we want to keep this very lively and interesting. So we intend to go into the presentation, do that for possibly within an hour or 30, depending on how the number of minutes do take us. And then we would potentially get into like a question and answer time. We're thinking about some tiny quiz, but let's see how that one goes. Then we might pick a case study. We probably could pick sample of businesses here and see what they should like watch out for. We just really want to make it very practical. So we might want to pick maybe a few, maybe 2 by 2 or just a sample of a pair. One company here or one startup here to another startup whom we've identified could license, one can license to the other, and probably the other can license to the other one, and so on, and see if we can have a chain and start looking into the impact of, the presentation we had gone through or we would have gone through, across the time. And then, of course, there'll be a bit of a check with the resources and where to go after here and from here. So that is what we intend to do. If you have any other expectations, we are very interested. You can send like a chat or a message to, there's an ID here specifically identified as, I believe that will be iSpace. I hope they do rejoin because I don't see it again. So you can send like a question there. You can send me a direct message during the chat. I think they're still here. iSpace Research. They should still be here. So you can send the direct message to me or to them for any reconsideration. We'll look at it and then of course get it in there. All right, cool. So once again, thank you so much for being here. It's a big planet now. We've got over 7.5 billion people. You could have been anywhere, including but not limited to Monaco, Greece, US, UK, Ghana, Nigeria, but you're here and wherever and whatever you were supposed to be doing, you've decided to join this. So for that, I'm grateful for choosing to be here. It's an honor to have you here. I'm trusting that, of course, I'll be sharing, but that I also learned from you. So let's make this very interactive. So what I'm actually do, what's going to actually happen is that fundamentally, I like to know my audience even a bit more. So what we intend to do is there'll be like a mic pass around. I'm not sure if where you are, like you'll be able to unmute and talk. Would love to hear you. If you can even come on video, even better, just to hear who you are, what you do. And then, of course, there are questions that people ask. If you didn't ask any question prior to the presentation, we definitely would still want to take it, right? Because we want to make sure that by the time we are done, each and everybody's, like every person's request or desire for why they decided to join this session is addressed as much as possible. So we'll still take those questions of what your expectations are, but now we have in total 23 people at 21 minutes past 11. And so by gross or netting, we're down to about 20 people joining. So we'd love to like hear from everybody as much as possible. For me, I just really see this as we want to make sure it's customized for you, right? So we want to try and hear from you, understand you, like, what you do, your businesses and all, so that we take all of that into consideration during the presentation. So with how much I do, if you can hear me, not particularly in any order, but we will just go ahead and just maybe by the list I see here, we just call the name so that we don't delay. Because we also know by way of culture, when you say we've left the mic open, anybody can talk. Sometimes a delay between who goes next. So we just really go in that manner. If the next person is not available, we'll just move to the next one. But please don't be shy. Don't be shy, okay? I want to keep this very lively and free as much as possible. Normally, this was supposed to have been done in person, but I think because of probably work schedule and where people are located, we decided to do this online. All right. So with how much I do, unless there's like any question or any comment for reconsideration, we'll just move straight into the session. So I would want to pass the mic over to Abna Jakunwa Oshodakun, to just really tell us briefly about what you do, as a person, the business you are into, or the company you are here for with, and what potentially your expectations are. All right, over to you, Abna, and standing by.
Okay, Emmanuel, nice meeting you again. I'm Abna Jakunwa Oshodakun. I'm a research and academia participant on the RIG project. I'm a student, have EABNAC Research 2. I'm currently a data design for development scholar, no students at the Leaders of African Institute. And also in health, I'm a public health education fellow in the health literacy project too. We are looking at maximizing the business everywhere, building the actual technical competencies in all diversified fields as we started the journey and being actors of families, education, and diverse institutions through the RIG project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Abena. Once again, nice having you here. So I would move to, I can see the name here, Ajua Bempoma. Ajua, if you can unmute, yeah, we would love to hear you.
Hi everyone. Hi Manuel.
Yeah.
My name is Ajwa, Gifty Ajwa Bempong. The Ajwa Bempong is like a local name. So I'm a student. I'm studying AI. I'm in level 300. And I saw this on the IHS concept, like why not join England? So I'm just here to learn. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Ajua. All right, thank you so much. Up next, Anne, if you can hear us, mute and tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and what your expectations are. Okay. Anne, if you can hear us, we'd love to hear from you. If we don't hear from you in 5 seconds, we'll come back to you. So don't be shy. We'll come back to you, but we'll just probably move to the next person, Anthony Amponsa. Hello, Anthony, if you can hear us.
Hello.
Yes. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I don't see Anthony anymore. All right, cool. So I think we'll move to Awal Mohammed, autopilot. Yeah. Awal, if you can hear us. Okay. All right, we'll move to Bisilki, if you can hear us, Bisilki. Okay, we'll move to Esther. Esther, if you can hear us.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, Esther Germania, I'm a RIC participant. I'm representing Brainbox Research Institute. I'm a researcher at Brainbox Research Institute.
Okay.
We do research on social sciences, and then we do trading, data analysis, and other stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Thank you. All right. Awesome. So we'll move to the next person I see on the list. Gifty Jima, if you can hear us. Okay. All right. So I don't want to believe it's shyness, right? I just really want to think probably it's the internet or the microphones are not on. So that's it. All right, we'll move to Irene Nopoku team. If you can hear us, we'd love to hear from you briefly. Okay. All right, we'll move to Joshua. Joshua, if you can hear us, do tell us a bit about yourself, what you're into, and what your expectations are in this session. Okay. I guess Joshua is not able to speak. And if you're speaking, maybe you're muted, so do check. Okay. We'll move to Michael Aka. Mike, if you can hear us.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And
Yeah, good
my
morning.
name is Michael Aka, and I'm an environmental research scientist with the Ghana Atomic Mechanism about your protocols that we will need, the cost as well, and any other important issues. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. All right, cool. So I'm still not hearing some people. Mostly that's like very key for me because I want to see that people are present. I've been at certain Zoom calls where you see a lot of people, but people have just tuned in and the phone is somewhere in the shop or in the kitchen, and yeah, they've joined, but there's nobody. So I like to do this. So iSpace, please do give me some space. I want to know my people. Okay, so I know Nima too. Okay, so Nima too, I'm going to skip you. Because you're with the iSpace team, I could get that straight up. If you're with the iSpace team and I just still come back to you, please have mercy. I might not have probably checked. Noah Kwesi Nate, if you're with us, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, all right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, so as you already said, my name is Noah Kusinati. I'm a third year student of Accra Technical University. I'm offering medical laboratory science. Personally, I have interest in the research space and specifically to work in the data analysis area. So I just saw this in one of my groups that I'm in, and I decided to join to learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so I think that we'll just move on to Enma Uzichukwu, if you can hear us.
Hi, yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Sorry, I just joined the meeting.
Yeah,
so
don't
I'm
worry.
not sure
So
what-
we just want to know who's joined and what you do or what business or institution you're with and your expectation for the program, or when we are done, like what are you expecting? Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So my name is Uma Ozuchu and I work with iSpace. So I'm the operations manager at iSpace.
Okay.
And I'm joining just to know.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much, Inma, for being able to join. All right, so we'll move to Osman Abdul Wahab.
Hello.
Hello, Osman.
Okay. I'm in the person of Osman Abdul Wahab, a mathematics graduate from the University of Ghana, and I'm currently a service personnel. My interest is into the business world, so I just came here to learn about it and see how well I make myself better to face the entrepreneurial world. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Osman. Thank you. We'll move to Precious, if you can hear us. Precious, then Raymond, then Ruth, then Samson. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to move on to Raymond Abu. Ray, if you can hear us, quick intro by yourself, what you do, and what your expectation is or are. Okay, we'll move to Ruth then. Ruth, if you can hear us.
Okay, good morning. So I'm Ruth Ashray, biological sciences, a teacher, and then I run a small manufacturing company into the production of detergents. I saw this ad and I felt like since I'm into manufacturing and research, I would want to learn more and see how best I can improve myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ruth. Thanks for being here. Samson, if you can hear us.
Okay, sure. Good morning to your lecturers, your student. I'm happy to have met Mr. Emmanuel in the last RIC program. Yeah.
Sure.
So actually, I'm a national service personnel at the Sustainable Energy Service Center on KNUST campus. And I'm also an innovator, engaged in a number of startup competitions and also currently working towards building a startup of my own. Yes, thank you.
All right, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, so we have Stella, and we have Steven and Chuminok, and then Wisdom, then Yao, in that order, and then we just quickly jump into the session. So yeah, let's do this. Stella, if you can hear us, brief about yourself, what you're into, and your expectation for and from the program. Okay, we'll move to Enoch then, if Enoch, you can hear us.
Okay. I'm a student of Accra Technical University and I'm studying medical laboratory science. And my expectations for this summit or seminar is just to learn more about research.
Okay. Okay. All right, sure. Thank you. Wisdom, if you can hear us, we'd love to hear from you briefly. Okay, all right. So we'll do Yao or Say Tutu last, and then we'll jump into the session. Yao, if you can hear us, a brief about yourself, what you do, and your expectation from the program.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel. So good morning to all. My name is Yao Rakon Setutu, as Emma said. I am an SME business advisor who has founded and runs an SME consulting firm called New Insights. 3 main services that we focus on: grants writing, business advisory services, and then training. I joined this talk because I'm keen to learn what insights I can gain from technology, because I have an idea, I have a tech idea concerning a website platform that I want to help to increase access, SME access to finance. So I'm interested in anything technology as well. And I have a background in fintech as well. So I guess I'm keen to learn a lot from you and then everyone as well.
Okay, all right, sure, y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. All right. So once again, we had to do this quick session because I like to just really break the ice in the room wherever I present, if that opportunity is there, just to get people to speak and be lively. If this was a physical session, we'll just do a bit of even a stretch, just really getting to know each other. You would reach out to about 5 people to exchange contacts before even the program starts, get to know people. So we break the ice in the room, because I think it's one of the things at programs where people sort of stay in their shells and we finish presenting and then they disappear, which I want to sort of break that thing wherever I try to go. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for helping do this quick intro. If you've not been able to introduce yourself, no worries. As we go on, if you ever introduce yourself, so we get to know you more and know what you do. All right, so thank you so much. Once again, just a quick intro. My name is Emmanuel Appiah. I've already been introduced by the iSpace team, so I won't really go so much and too much into it. But the idea here today is to get into the session of talking about how to license technology for industry. So without much ado, would jump in then. All right, let me share my screen and let's do this. Okay. So Gloria, please do confirm for me if I have the permission to share my screen. I think I have a bit of there's a warning here by Zoom. So I'm not sure if I have that to go, but let me do that. Let me share and just confirm. Let me just confirm. Okay.
Hi, Emmanuel. Can you share your screen now, please?
Okay. Okay, sure. So I think because of my there's so much security I have set on my systems to ensure that for my screen to get out there on the network, it's just a lot of approvals. So please, just in case I drop off, the system will let me rejoin. So I'm about to click a button here. It might do that. Just really confirm a few things. Yeah, it shouldn't take long. All right, so moving now in 3, 2, 1, and action. Okay. All right, just a second. Looks like I'm not going to be kicked out after all. Just that. Okay, all right. Okay, so this is the part where it kicks me off and then I'll rejoin. Please do bear with me. Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm back graciously. All right, so let me do the sharing now. Yeah, I trust it should work now. All right, awesome. So just a quick check, and just to be sure where my eyes are going and why. I've got quite a couple of monitors here to just really monitor the presentation. So here's my direct feed. You see me watching here. Of course, I'm trying to just get a contact, and then of course I've got other screens on my left. So how much I do, just to confirm, I think I have my screen already in their states. Let me go ahead and share. Please confirm for me if you can see my screen being shared.
Yes, please, we can see.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, sure. So I think that the RIC program has been running for a while. And at this point, we're just going to dive into the idea of how to license technology for industry. The goal here will be to, look at all the, little nitty-gritties in every part of this topic. And go as deep as we can. But in some of the parts, the idea would potentially give you a heads up on what you should look into because of time. And the interesting part is that I think for some of these things, when we do get there, I'll point to those ones. It would take you considering working with some of the specific dedicated experts in those areas, because if you wanted to do it yourself, you could, but it will probably take longer. So when we get to those parts, we definitely will talk about them, but we just really touch on fundamentally the things that we believe and trust that you should know in order to be able to license technology for industry. The topic by itself has been sort of designed in a way that is very broad, right? Because you have the statement written in a way that you can look at it as the one offering the license or the one going to get the license. So we would like to look at it from that two perspective, as in when you are the licensor and then there's a licensee, and then when you are the licensee and then there's a licenser, what you should watch out for. The goal is to try and do our best to ensure that in this presentation, we've got, like a 360 degrees scope of things you should look out for and, kind of just really watch out for to ensure that you're doing the right things as much as possible, even though for all of them, or more so just not forgetting anything at all when it comes to licensing technology for industry. The subtopic fundamentally is how how you build your own business in and around research, and also we'll see a greater part of the elements of research and why it will be very, very key to be able to do a very good understanding of whether you are the licensor or the licensee and what you should really look out for and watch out for. Once again, my name is Emmanuel, CEO and CTO of AirReceive, and CTO, CISO, and DPO for Wire Money. And that's like a tall list, but I'm not really a man of titles. Mostly, I don't really care about the titles. I think it's just really about at a stage when you're doing certain things, people want to give you a certain credential, some alphabets together, so we can identify what sort of experience or skill set you've acquired over the years and all. So once again, it's also a reminder to say that at any point in the presentation, please feel free. I think there's an option to raise your hands or to even send in a chat question. Feel free, just send it in. You can send it directly to me or any of the iSpace team members, or you can even send it in the open channel. That's fine too. And then we'll just really take a look at it and address them. All right, so now the fundamentals. So in most of our learnings, as we potentially would have come to see, there is the whole idea of, okay, let's define the elements. What is a license? What is licensing? What is technology? What is industry? And, the rest, the idea, the content, products, services, and so on, right? So in quite a number of cases, I would want to believe when we hear licensing, there's quite a number of things that would really come in mind, including but not limited to your driver's license or some license that you have to do something. And of course, in Ghana here, we heard about the TV licensing thing, which I know a lot of us, I'm not sure if anybody here has ever paid TV license fees in Ghana, but those sort of things do come up in mind. And then, of course, you hear elements of licensing when it comes to the telecommunication space or music or some sort of a content or an idea or an innovation and how you can get a license to operate. Recently, Ghana is passing a law for a certain particular plant, and all of that. And before you can grow that plant, you need to get a license, So I think that all of these things do come up in mind, but just to help us with the context of our, discussion today, we just really look at them one after another. And then, of course, we would also talk about the idea of the questions that might have come up for us to have that at the back of our mind so that we don't lose track of any of them, because the idea is to also do the presentation in a way that we can address, if not all of them, as much as possible, right? So we would be quickly just going into the idea of some of the questions that came up. Someone said, I want to know how to register my product, how to grow my business, learn more on licensing or learn more of license. What type of technologies are commonly licensed in the industry? How can I articulate the challenges of my community to link with Ghana as a nation? What applies to other countries and how to protect our ideas. How can I protect my intellectual property when licensing technology? How do you patent a software idea and the process one has to go through? And then we have the step-by-step guide to obtain an IP. Then we also have, I think this was the last question as of the time we're doing the collation. What are the benefits of licensing technology for my startup? So that is the last one there. So we'll do our best. And I think at the last part of the presentation, we might even come back after we're done with everything, just to really double check them if we missed any of them at all, because we want to make sure we've dealt with each and every one of those as well. So we'll move to the next one. And now let's talk about licensing. So fundamentally, when we talk about licensing or license, we'll come back to the whole licensing thing. But the idea here is to define license, license. And I think some of us might know the spelling as with an S or with a C, but fundamentally the C is for British, the S is an American spelling if you'd want to. So it's fundamentally a permit, from any authority to own or use something, to do a particular thing or carry on a trade, right? Especially in certain restricted industries. So there are some industries where the capabilities to be able to have a license is very critical. So that is what you would normally find as, being defined. But in this particular, sort of dispensation, it goes beyond the idea of restricted industries or medical sector or the biosector or in telecoms, almost in any industry at all, depending on what you're doing. And of course, we'll come to see why you should even consider licensing and elements to consider and all of that stuff, and why it becomes key that even in cases and places where you're not necessarily, going through challenges of how to fundamentally decide whether you're in a restricted industry or not, and whether you should go for a license or not, we'll get to see all of that. Like I mentioned before, mostly when we mention the idea of licensing or licenses, vehicle licenses come to mind. Being able to drive, you need to get a license. In various countries, the respective governments have created licenses for certain things that you would want to use. It could be a service, it could be an infrastructure. The idea is that they just really want to be sure. In quite a number of cases, is the idea of you're coming for a license. Do you have the prerequisites to be able to get the said license to do what it is that you say you want to do? So if you want to drive, there's then the whole question of, have you gone to a driving school? Have you gone through the rudimentary and the basic things to be able to get your license? And we see quite a lot of that, and comparing that also into how that plays out in business, because at some point in your business, someone might be approaching you for a license, and you would have to create your own criteria and a list of what will be the qualifications for someone to be able to approach you and say, oh, I want a license to produce your stuff, or I want a license to use your services. You know, they need to pass those sort of, I'll call them probably benchmarks or checklists that you have for yourself. Of course, in governments or with the respective government bodies, there are various, checklists. If you want to get a driver's license, you have to have, been of a certain age. Possibly there are other documentations that will come in mind. So we'll see all of that correlation with what goes on in there. A license fundamentally is also a legal document that grants permission basically to do something that would otherwise have been illegal or restricted. And the key word I would even want to focus on more is the whole idea of restrictions. We would also probably go into a bit of the legalities or, the illegalities or the rights and wrongs of, where and when you do something, you sort of go contrary to the law and so on. This session fundamentally will not purely be a legal session. We're treating it more as a holistic 360-degree sort of a session where we're trying to touch on all the things that you need to look at. But when we get to the legal and law parts, we might touch on a few things in some of the industries and all, and also give a few pointers and all of that. And I think based on the jurisdictional scope that we will define for this presentation, because there are currently just so many laws, so many rules, but we'd have to pick at least one particular jurisdiction and use that as sort of our guide to see where all of the resources and materials could be found. There are many different types of licensing, like I've mentioned, and I've also mentioned the driver's license. There are professional licenses that you also need to have before you can operate. We see those a lot in the law sector and in the medicine space or pharmaceuticals or biospace, and a very interesting even area as accounting. If you really want to be treated seriously, then you have to have a license. And even in some of the other industries as well, there's quite a lot of them. Even in the software industry as well, we're beginning to see some bodies identifying themselves as licensing authorities to confirm that you can write the code or that you can do what it is that the other company wants to hire you for. So there's a whole business in and around now, software development companies relying on these licensing authorities to then say, can you give me candidates who have gone through your process for me to recruit or work with? And then there are also cases where you can go to the platform to look for some of these people who have gone through the licensing or the whole approval process to be cleared to be able to write software code and are proving themselves to do so. We also have elements of copyright licenses, which allow people to use, copyright materials and so on. Then we have elements of patent licenses, where you are fundamentally looking at the idea of allowing people to use a certain patent or an invention. We might go into that, but I know iSpace has done quite a set of seminars on these ones. If you didn't attend, you can reach out to them. I would want to believe they have a recording that they might publish on YouTube or some very defined channels that you can have access to, so you can reach out to them on that. We also have trademark licenses, where fundamentally you're allowing people to use your trademark as a brand, or more so such as brand names and logos. So you might have designed a very nice logo, and people just really feel, you know what, this logo is dope. It's really good, right? And they don't want to go and create any new thing. You could actually go through a whole licensing process, license that as a trademark, and have people to use it, and they will pay you some monies. And of course, they have to go through all the criteria or set of approvals that you have defined in order for them to be able to have access to it. Licenses are typically, specify, they basically specify the terms and conditions under which the permission is granted. So that will be very key. And of course, it talks about the duration. So how long you can use a license for, the scope of the permission, the fees and royalties that you probably would have to sort of like deal with, and all of that stuff. And of course, we would come to see how to even calculate that, things to take into consideration. How would you set a certain amount of money for, or this is how much I want to charge for this license? Because then if you don't get the numbers right, nobody might license it. Or If you also don't get the numbers right, a lot of people will troop in, they'll take the license, but you'll be losing out because then the value of what you are offering them, you actually didn't balance the numbers. So in all of this too, we are trusting and hoping that we'll be able to go into the unit economics, and just do a few numbers here and there when we get there to see how to balance all of that. Then we have the idea that, when you look at licensing, right, it's so important because it helps you protect the rights of you, the licenser, the person or the organization that is granting the said license to the licensee, the person or the organization that receives the license. So let's establish that, so whenever we mention licensor, is the one giving out the license. The licensee is the one actually receiving the license, so do keep that in mind. And by specifying the terms and conditions of a license, the license can help prevent disputes, and ensure that both parties are protected. So when you think about the whole idea of license, fundamentally or akin to what you'd see even on the road, for those of us who do drive, right? The fact that you have a license doesn't mean you can just do anything. That you can, if the road goes right, forward on your right, you can just show up there and you're driving on your left, and because you have a license, you can do that. There are rules and regulations, there are principles to follow. There are things you can do or cannot do. So have all of that at the back of your mind as we are discussing this licensing thing, because it's not too far away at all. You, the licensor, would have to set up your rules and regulations. The one also coming to receive definitely should have checked themselves if it is fit with them or for them before they can actually go ahead for the approval to use it. And then, of course, we also have, some fundamentals of why, you would have a license. Fundamentally legal protection, a peace of mind, increased revenue or decreased revenue if you don't do your numbers well. And then in quite a number of cases too, you would have the advantage of having an expanded market or reach, because then someone is going to successfully get a license from you to operate and, cover or do business with your license in places that normally you wouldn't have had the chance to be able to operate. And then, of course, elements of cost. So the cost of obtaining the license can vary, depending on the type of license and the jurisdiction in which it is obtained, right? Then we have elements of complexity. So the process of obtaining a license can be complex and also time consuming. And again, we'll come to see to some extent, when it comes to startups and the idea of you want to go and get a license, but maybe even the costs outweighs your whole year budget. What should you do, right? I will be expecting someone to have that at the back of their mind, like, what do they do? Because then, let's say their total revenues for the whole year will be about, say, 100,000. That is if it would even reach. And then after the 100,000, you take cost out, it will be left with probably, say, 30,000 or 70. No, it won't reach 70. In most cases, there's so much cost, right? That 30, are you going to use that to get a license, or what do you do? We'll talk about that as well, and all of that. Then, of course, there's regulatory changes, because then the space keeps changing. There are new laws, new, rules being written by the respective jurisdictions in the various countries wherever you are operating and all of that stuff. And of course, in some countries, you'd come to learn that the license rules and regulations in your source country or wherever you are coming from might not necessarily tally with where the license is going, and in those cases, what do you do? So we're just really trusting that we'll be able to touch on quite a number of these things. So overall, a license can be a very valuable tool for businesses and organizations that want to actually protect their intellectual property and expand their market reach. But however, it's very important to weigh the benefits and risk of obtaining a license before making a very, very, I would call it a bold decision, because it's not a light one. It's similar to the idea that somebody could be driving out there right now. They don't have a license. We know what could go wrong, and we probably might also, if you are to approach them to ask them, why are you driving without a license? They also might give you some other reasons, but we need to sort of like really try and understand all the two sides, what are the pros and cons of getting a license. So in the sequence as we go on, we'll be able to touch on all of that. Licensing fundamentally, now we've talked about license, right? So licensing fundamentally is not too far away from what that we've been talking about. So I'll probably rush through this one, but basically it's a business arrangement in which one company, which is the licensor, which you just mentioned, grants another company, which is the licensee. And sometimes it can be a person, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. The right to use the intellectual property or the IP in exchange for fee or royalty. And sometimes it might not even be for fee or royalty, but also for the idea of visibility, because then you just probably just want to give the license out for certain specific brands to be able to then really get your name out there, or get your presence out there. So it depends on what you really want out of the whole deal by the end of the day. Of course, the IP, that can be licensed can include, trademarks, patents, copyrights, trade secrets, and even industrial designs. And in some cases, it can just be the whole idea of content, that you have a certain content that you have decided to sort of put a license on. If someone wants to use it, they would have to come and get a license from you. There's a duration, and every duration set has this amount of money that you basically want to, charge for. So you can define all of that. And there are many different types of licensing arrangements. But they all share some same basic principles, and the licensor fundamentally grants the licensee the rights to use its IP, and then in most cases the licensor retains the ownership of the IP. So I've barely seen a case where the one issuing the license, which is the licensor, fundamentally just says, "Oh, this is it." They shake hands on it, say take and go. In most cases, there is retaining of ownership, and I think it fundamentally comes down to how the human system is also wired. We sort of want to be in control, want to be in charge of like what it is that we've created and all of that. This means that the licensee in most cases cannot sell or assign the IP to another party. So within the terms and clauses of whatever the licensor would have written, it fundamentally would have come across as, there shouldn't be the idea that I gave you the license to use in another country. Then I realized, wait, another brand is also using the stuff that I gave you, and they don't have a license from me. And guess what? You're the one that came for the license. You're now sort of becoming me in that country. In most cases, that term would have been expunged from the terms and conditions of the specific license terms or legal arrangement between the licensor and then the licensee. Licensing can be a very effective way for companies to expand their businesses and reach, new markets like we've mentioned, because then you might not be able to operate everywhere. And in some cases too, the requirement for your business to be present in those countries, and by way of how long you've been in the industry, you might not be able to have, go there to establish, register, and get people to work for you. So then there might be a brand there that would fundamentally represent you and approach you. And of course, we'll come to see the idea that it's not always that they have to come to you, but you can also go a step further to start identifying them. And we'll see them all pretty soon when we start to talk about the idea of how do you also do that? Because you can't just wait. In quite a number of cases, especially if you're a startup or you're now starting, you would have to probably do a bit of the, a bit of the legwork to identify them and start approaching them to then say, okay, I have this. I think that it would benefit your industry. And in most cases, it will not even be the idea of, oh, I have a license, come and get some. This is like the best thing ever. No. In most cases, it will be more of you're seeking to present your idea to them because you found a correlation between your brand and them, solutions that you are offering and how it can benefit them, right? And then you're seeking for an opportunity to present to them. So it's after the presentation and everything that, of course, you would have done your homework, and we'll see how to do all of that homework. And that's where the whole research thing comes in, very, very critical. And then you are able to sweep them off their feet. And then they say, oh, this is interesting. I think we're going to need this. So they say, we'll get back to you in about 1 month's time or some months. And sometimes it can take a year, depending on the other company, which in your case will be a licensee, depending on their plans. Sometimes it can take that long. So by the time they are getting back to you, in the MOUs and the documentations and what you share with them, that's when sometimes it might come up as, oh, we have various ways you can work with us. In some cases, people even do a buyout outright, of course, which might be all too so expensive, depending on your approach. We'll look at all of that too. What should be the game plan for you, right from the time that you even had an idea? What's the plan? Are you targeting royalties, fees, merger and acquisition? Are you looking at the idea of equity or safe and so on? Because licensing has just that thing to play into all the things of the business to then say, this is how I want to operate. So by the time the licensee is approaching you, you should have thought about all of this out, to then know what options to give them, because in most cases, there should be options. If you go with a single option, your chances of failing, in my opinion, and from what I've seen over the years, is very high, so we'll also look at all of that stuff. So fundamentally, we've highlighted the following: that if you're able to do your license, or you're able to get your license, or that if you are the licensor and you set up your whole licensing system or approach, or you go through all the legal processes to set it up, you have a chance of increasing your revenue, expanding your market, your brand awareness is solid. People can't just use your brand without your notice and stuff like that. They need to approach you properly. There is also the risk reduction, or you being able to reduce your whole risk as much as possible, because then it just really helps you to know that if someone is going to use your product or service, or something that you'd have created, you have a systems there to milk your revenues, or to milk the fees and royalties as well and as much as possible. We'll also go into the idea of the other risk involved, elements of loss of control, because in quite a number of cases, if you are the licensor, the chances of you losing control is very high. We've seen cases where startups or even solid businesses have somehow been bullied out of control over the business, or over the whole licensing approach. And then sometimes the gray lines between what your licensing said and what is possible and what is not. If you're telling me, for example, you created, I heard someone say a detergent, that they do detergent. So you've been successful. You've created a detergent, which when we fetch 1 tablespoon of the stuff and put it in like a gallon of diesel, it dissolves everything and turns it into water, right? Just follow me on this idealistic thing. But in your licensing term, you're telling me that, oh, you can only produce it with vanilla flavor. I'm like, okay, yeah, right, I hear you. I go back in the factory and I'm using cinnamon, I'm doing other stuff, like that, those sort of things, like what do you do about them? And of course, I think in some of these things, we'll just leave the mic open to hear people's opinions when we get there, to say, we just want to hear people too, because we also want to treat this as a real-time research to say, if you have such a scenario, like, what do you think the idea would be to ensure that your stipulations of the law and the terms and conditions, and then the MOUs you would have written, or the rules of engagement and terms and conditions, are being followed to the letter? How do you ensure that, audit trails and, doing the checks back to back to ensure that they are not breaching any terms of the license, because you want to maintain a certain level of quality or consistency with your product, or with your idea, or whatever it is that you've created, and all of that. Then we have elements of, royalty disputes and fee disputes. What is the schedule, or what is the time of the payment, and how much are they paying, how do they pay, and all of that stuff. Those issues also come up when it comes to licensing. We've dealt with quite a number of them. I think over the past 2 years, with a few brands in and around the world whom we are using some of their license, and some also wants to use some of our license as well. So I'll use some of it. I think at some point I'll use some of our case studies, or our own experiences with brands that I have worked with, and what they did, and how we're able to sort of like really match things out. But when it comes to some of these things, a great extent, we just do an open mic to also hear from others in terms of what people think should have been the way forward. Then there's also the element of intellectual property infringement, where you can have the idea of somebody has come for the license, but some other person has also started using your IP in their territory, and how do you deal with that, third-party issues and all of that stuff. Overall, license can be a very effective way, as we've mentioned, for your business to be able to reach out more, and so on and so forth. So we'll start jumping into technology, and just to really look at the idea of what is technology. And then by the time we are done, we would have just defined our various elements to understand what's like really going on. All right. So fundamentally, the next thing we'll talk about has to do with the idea of technology, where we would say that technology is the application of knowledge, for the whole idea of being able to achieve a practical goal in reproductive or reproducible ways, right? So we'll just really straight to that next thing, and just really talk about tech. But mostly when we talk about technology, I picked this specific image because I just felt that's how it probably might sound to a lot of people, or, that's how people perceive it, because in most cases we hear tech and people are thinking computers and all, but it's not just IT or code, right? There are technologies for production, and we'll jump into industries very soon, where we'll get to see this whole idea of what industries are there and the various technologies that are there, which might not even necessarily include direct software, necessarily, or that it's an industry governed more by technologies that are sort of machinery or chemical related, or some sort of a physics theory which is being used to really enhance that industry in a way that optimizes, reproducible outcomes at a faster rate or better rate or cheaper rate and stuff like that. And I think this part of the element of technology would also really come in handy for us on the whole idea of, okay, I want to give a license out. Why would people approach me to actually say, I want to have this license to operate? What it is that you've been able to do? What have you been able to solve? That, for me, I think will be one of the central things for what anybody has to look into, because in most cases, like we've probably heard already, by giving the licensing out, you stand a chance of even losing control over your tech. So you better be sure that you have something that is solid. One, you also have something that that by issuing the license, it can't probably easily be copied as much as possible, or there are ways to govern against copying or verifying if there's a copy out there that you tracked but was produced without your watermark or hidden trackers within them and so on. So we'll also talk about those things and how to ensure that you are bringing in as much as technology that you can think of or afford, to ensure that you don't get ripped off of whatever it is that you've been able to come up with, right? All right, cool. So we'll move on to technology. Kind of just really want to speed things up a bit more. So in most cases, when we talk about our industries, there's quite a lot of things that come up in mind. If you are in a particular industry, in some cases, you might be thinking that, okay, your brain goes first to the industry in which you are. So if you're probably in the services space, in most cases your mind goes there, but there's quite a lot of other industries out there. So we'll also touch on those ones. And the idea for that is we want to also try and understand the whole idea of what industries are out there. And then as we go deeper into our discussion, to look into the whole idea of licensing, we might be making cross relationships between some of the industries and, what to really look out for and watch out for, because you come to realize that all the other industries interact together. Like, you can't operate separately, because in the end, you're going to have to serve people, like the customers, so by the time you're done, it affects every one of those other industries, directly and indirectly. Everything, whatever you're doing today, now, it doesn't matter. It affects every other thing quietly. So all of that has to be taken into consideration with whatever it is that you're basically doing. So fundamentally, we've got some primary industries, and we've got some very secondary industries and tertiary industries as well. The idea is that when you get into the primary sector, we're looking at extractions and production of raw materials for basically from the natural world. So if you're into something like agro sector or mining or forestry, those sort of businesses or actions or entities that are into raw material focus, like they're getting the pure stuff from the earth, those might be classified as a primary industry as well. And of course, as we move on, we'll get to see the idea of where you should be able to identify yourself quickly, because you would also come to realize that there's a whole value chain. There's a whole chain connected, where your brand, whether you believe it or not, is connected to some brand ahead of the chain or behind the chain. And, you have to take all of that into consideration with your licensing thing. Then we have secondary industries. These are industries that transform the raw material into finished goods. As an example of those industries might include manufacturing or construction or energy and all of that stuff. Then we have the tertiary ones, which provide services to consumers and businesses. are, fundamentally in the area of transportation, healthcare, education, and all of that. Then we've got quaternary industries. I probably might bet that this might be the first time some of us are hearing about it. And these are industries that are, knowledge-based, right? It's about what do you know? And, that is a very interesting area where you're providing high-value services. You probably might have knowledge about how to make sure that an API solution, which is an application programming interface, could be built solidly. You don't write the code, you don't produce the servers and all, but you have solid knowledge about how to do that. You might fall into that category. How do you license your services for people to come and use? So that would also be one of those industries which you term as the quaternary, or some might pronounce it as quaternary industries. Industries are important. Of course, we've come to see them, that without these industries, as you see on your screen, fundamentally, there's no commerce, there's no economic growth for any country. All of these industries work together to ensure that the economic engine is running. And I think if you check Ray Dalio's presentation on the economic engine and how it works on YouTube later on after this presentation, it's something I would recommend that we should definitely take a look at. You get to see the idea that all the industries talk to each other, whether you believe it or not. That little, it can be as funny as this, like you produce toothpick and you think, oh, I don't really have to worry, but your toothpick affects every other thing, quietly. The concept of the butterfly effect, where there's this whole theory around a butterfly flinging its wings somewhere can affect every other thing elsewhere. So you always have to have that in mind, that whatever it is you're doing, you don't exist as an island. I mean, that's the whole concept of why I'm hammering on this. Then, of course, the idea that when you start to get into the other type of industries, as you've seen here, we've got a lot of them in these subsections. We've got the agriculture, manufacturing, construction. We have transportation, healthcare, education, finance. Generally the information technology sector, which is IT. We've got media and entertainment, retail, wholesaling, logistics, energy, utilities, professional and business services, government services, or the government as an industry as well. That's also another thing by itself, and so on. And we have even the legal space as well as part of the whole set of industries that do exist as well. So that much I do. Move into the whole idea of we need to make a bit of a solid jurisdictional choice because most of us are probably, say, in Ghana or joining from Ghana. We'll be a bit biased to center our presentation around the idea of what happens in Ghana, or let's say you're operating from Ghana, what should you look out for? But as and when it's applicable, we will not hesitate at all to use some other examples if necessary to just make a point of what we are trying to say. All right, so we'll just keep this in mind. We might talk about the idea of the acts and the allies in the country, because they also form a very major part of what you need to know. And I know that a lot of these documents in the legal space are free and open to all of us, but I can bet it'll probably be 1%. And I think that it's necessary because it forms as part of your research culture as a person to be interested to say, I'm in this industry. Let me just be curious about what are the laws for what I do, right? And you can just really pick some of these subject matters, and the materials are out there. You can download them. They're PDFs that you can have a look and just really share, just really go through them. And of course you can share because it's public information, and read them, because within those terms and conditions, in most cases, what we have come to learn is that the laws are not so far away. Typical example, if you come in the fintech space, right? If BOG says that, before a customer can, and before BOG is even saying this, the reason why they've written all of the acts and the LIs, the 930, the 830, 832, and so on, which you would find if you wanted to know them, is that they want to make sure that the space is regulated, right? So they don't joke with these licenses at all. And if they find you, they are very good at making scapegoats out of the brands that they've found which didn't come for licensing from them. But coming back to the whole reason for bringing BOG up, the idea is that in the terms or the acts that they would have stated clearly that, number one, the customer should not be allowed to do transactions if they've not done KYC. KYC fundamentally is know your customer. So if the customer is not known, and how do we know the customer? They have to provide the validity of themselves. They have to provide some IDs and so on to show that truly this particular person is a human being. It's not a robot. It is not some being from another planet. They are who they say they are. And now technology has even taken it further. You will take a selfie of your live head, not a dead head. And then all of that will be filed as part of we know the customer. In some cases, you submit your passport or your birth certs, depending on what the particular entity is and so on, right? And now the whole idea is this. The terms are clearly in there. BOG will say, we want to know who the customer is. If at any point in time we approach you, the business in that fintech space or doing that financial related, sort of business, and you can't produce the customer or you can't show who they are, you're done, you're finished, right? That's one of those. So you'd realize that if you were to take time to read those very publicly available documents and you have an idea that you wanted to execute in the fintech space, you'll be way ahead of the curve, as opposed to you probably know maybe the operations part or the technology part, you can write the code, but then you've not taken time to read the fundamentals of a publicly available document, which is the LIs and then the acts of the specific country. And one of the things we've also come to realize is that all of these acts and LIs, which are legislative instruments, they are very public. In most cases, it's not hidden at all. Maybe a funny comment, maybe in North Korea it's hidden, I don't know. But in most countries, it's very publicly available. You can find them and read them, right? In one of the other stipulations of BOG, they would also say that you should not necessarily have a database which is so ephemeral. All they will be saying is that whatever you're doing should be able to help us check what happened, if the person's transactions went through or didn't go through. What that fundamentally means is that because of that law, which also backs the licensing you'll be going for. And there's quite a tall list of them, but we won't pick just the fintech area to talk about that, because then that will make the whole conversation biased. But these are just a few examples. But the idea is that if you're going to build a technology, there's a timeline BOG has set as part of the licensing to say, if you want to operate in the fintech space, your database should be available for, say, not less than 5 years or 6 years. And, the numbers are there depending on the level you really want to get to. So what that means is that if you are the licensee and you're going for that license, whatever database type or system or technology you are using to store your information, you have to ensure that your code and whatever you're writing is consistent with the law. So that those are just a few highlighters I really want to give. Of course, you'd find a lot of content with regards to other industries. There are a lot of the LIs. Maybe at some point, if it becomes necessary, I probably might just give a few pointers on where to find them, because then some of us have just downloaded everything just to make sure that even if we've not read it and there's a need to refer, you can always go there and refer to a particular industry's LI or act and so on. So from today, you have no excuse if you didn't know the laws. And that's also another thing with the law, right? Not knowing it is not an excuse, because in most cases, when the law is passed, it's declared as a public content or public material. It's not hidden. They will publicize it and share it. So if you've not known it or you've not gone seeking for it, then it's on you. If you do anything that goes contrary to the law, then of course you'll be the one, unfortunately, at the wrong side of the table. All right, so without much ado, now that we've defined a few context of which laws we might probably use and refer to wherever necessary as that of Ghana, we'll move to the next part, which will take us into a very interesting deep dive, which is a business model canvas. Once again, please, at any point in time, feel free, pause us and ask a question, or you can raise your hands, or you can draw my attention to something, and then we'll just touch on them. All right, so let's talk about business model canvas. So in most cases, we've got people having ideas and like, I just dreamt, I had this idea. I think I'm going to be a millionaire. Wow. And then they thank whichever God that they worship, or if they are atheistic, they might just thank themselves and say, oh, thank you, God. This is going to make money. But we've got to go into the nitty-gritties of the idea of you need to understand the business model that you have, or the business model that you're going to operate with, right? Because then when we start to get into it, you get to see that there's a very, very critical need to go through this whole process. So without much ado, we'll just like really jump in and just really start to look at it. So we've got the fundamentals, of which this is what you see mostly out there, that you've got to know your value proposition. And that's what I had mentioned before, that in all of this, the reason why people might come for your license, or that you would also go for a license to operate, is that it's quite a number of things. It's either you've been able to find a certain solution to something, which I was given a very interesting example as you've been able to create some powerful detergent. We pick just a tablespoon of the stuff, you drop it into like a bucket of diesel, and it turns everything into water. That would be powerful, right? Because the market for that is, I don't know if anything like that is ever created, but it will just be wow. It would just be awesome, right? Now, you found something, it's unique. That's like probably fundamentally going to be your unique selling proposition, that you've created something, that a detergent that can wipe diesel off, the hashes of dirt, it can clear it off in minutes or seconds, right? You need to really understand that and really draw the whole business model around that. Who are going to be like your customers, what is going to be the relationship you would have with them, what is going to be the channel for which they will receive your product. You need to understand the idea of what sort of activities that you would be having in order to bring the idea to life, or continually keeping the idea running, your key resources. And then, of course, your key partners. So what sort of partners are you going to work with, in this business? You need to know all of that ahead of time. Then, of course, what is going to be your cost structure? What elements should you define in there? What are your fixed costs? What are your dynamic costs or changing costs as and when necessary? So you need to sort of like zoom into all of that. Then we come to the revenue part, where you're really fundamentally looking at the idea of what are you going to sell? Like in the end, are you selling the detergent, in this case, the detergent, are you selling the detergent, or are you selling the licensing for the detergent? Or in some cases, are you selling the bottle of the detergent, right? Such that they come for a refill. So you have to think about this. And in most cases, this would take you into a very deep research zone. It's not something you can clear off in a matter of a day or an hour or two, right? It's actually a continuous process. Some of the information you would find in and around what your unique selling value proposition is, you probably might be humbled even the more when you start to get into the idea of other companies are offering something similar, or sometimes even better than what you thought that you're going to offer. You need to be very realistic about what it is that you think and claim that you can offer, because there have been cases where people just said, oh, I am giving a license for this. And the licensee just asks, so what's special about yours? Like the person goes like, or the entity or startup goes like, oh, we are the only people who can do this. Okay. So the licensee just says, okay, fine. What's the price of the license? 500,000 USD. Okay, cash down. Bam, they pay. They get their lawyers in, you bring your lawyers, they sign everything. Then they start going into operation, only to discover that there are over 422 other brands which are doing something similar to yours. We've seen there's something that was similar, which happened, I think, recently between JP Morgan and some other brand, which I don't really want to bother saying. If you don't do some of these research, sometimes you stand the chance of losing your freedom. And when we say losing your freedom, you could go to jail. So it's very key to understand what it is that you're doing. What offer are you offering? to the licensees, So in all of this, because we are treating licensing and how to license your technology for your industry or for an industry, we'll try and match each and every one of these that we'll be touching on briefly with the idea of licensing, and the concepts and things that should be ringing in your mind when we talk about you licensing something, to people in your particular sector, industry, or whichever space that you operate from. So number one will be the red area, which is not necessarily red as in it's dangerous or anything, but it's key, because if you don't solve this well, you stand a chance of not really doing anything massively impactful in the other areas, right? We've also seen cases where people sort of found a red area because they found a green here, or they found a partner here and all of that. So, I'll not really make it like a straight jacket thing to say this is where everybody starts from. Not everybody starts from here. Back in 2000, and I believe it was 2007, 2008-ish, we found a partner who was offering us a specific product at a certain cost. And we made a certain amount of profit. So we decided, you know what? We think we have a business. We're going to sell something. But guess what? The business lasted for, I think, in and around about 6-ish years. And something came in the space, and we had no other choice but to face the music and start really pivoting to say, no, we can't compete anymore, because then this part and this and that had worked for us to create all the other parts, right? So we had a partner who could give us a certain offer. The pricing was good, the money was good. We're like, yeah, so we did that. We found our customer segments, those who would be willing to pay for such a thing and who needed such a service. We're able to establish some element of communication with them, and then establish a channel for how they would receive the said solution or service. We went ahead to list our activities and what we would do, and then our key resources, what we had and what we didn't have, things we wanted to acquire and not acquire. And yeah, we sold for some time. We made some good money, but we really had to come down. Now, the quick lesson from this for me, and probably to also share with you, is that I'm very confident if we had started from what we really have to offer, then maybe it would have been a better approach. Maybe the business would still have been stronger, as opposed to we having to have been forced to slow down things. And we even ended up, handing some of our customers out to other brands because we felt we wanted them to be served well and so on. But this is a talk for another day, right? So in all your licensing stuff, please pay attention to what is it that is new, what's unique about what you're trying to offer. And in actually zooming in on what you really have to offer, the quick things that really come up in mind in most cases will be that what is so special, about it. You have to really face it. And there are places that you can actually search to be sure that what you've created is solid or not solid. There are websites you can go and check whether people have done something like that and what was the success level or failure level. There's a website called Failori. I do share it a lot whenever I have the chance to present, because I think it's a humbling website where when you go there, you just really learn a lot from people who have executed ideas. And the funny thing is, the same idea, it would have worked in Silicon Valley. But if you move to Ottawa, it will not have worked. It might have worked in somewhere in UK, but if you move it to, say, France, it doesn't work anymore. It might have worked in France, you bring it to Africa, it doesn't work. And within Africa, it might have worked in Ghana, you bring it to Nigeria, it's a different story, it won't work. And it might not necessarily be because your idea is terrible, but there are other things you really consider before you actually sort of declare that you have a solid business or a startup here. So know your offering. And by knowing your offering, the almost immediate thing to start looking into are, who are the people you're going to serve? What kind of people does your idea serve? And that is also very, very key. Like, don't underestimate it. You really have to start segmenting them. Who are going to be your early adapters, people who are just crazy with the idea. They would sing the song for you. They would present your idea for you without even you needing to talk so much about it. You want to sort of like really segment all of them out so you know them deeply, and just really group them into sessions and know that these are people you probably want to approach in the first, say, quarter or first year, second year. These are the groups you want to have and so on. So you sort of have to do your research and homework to understand, who you're serving or whom you're serving and group them. Then you also, by way of knowing the people you're going to serve, and of course the customer segmentations, you of course have to know the relationship you really want to have with them. In the relationship area, there are quite a number of things. It's fundamentally all about, you're possibly in the dark when you start. Nobody knows about your idea or nobody knows about your business, but you want them, you sort of like seeing them. They can see you, right? How do you reach out to them? How do they get to see you? Or even if you're in the dark, how can they locate you GPS wise in terms of the concept of spatial thinking? How do they really find you? Like they know, oh, in that dark area, that's where that brand is, but we know it is there. How would they know? So there are various channels, or I'll talk about channels, but there are various medium or various ways that you can use for them to sort of like really get to establish your presence, to then say, okay, I'm going to interface with them on the web, on radio or traditional media, newspapers. I'm going to do posters. I'm going to get myself out there. I'm going to put my brand at front decks of certain pre-arranged relationship with companies and places for them to see me. I'm going to do t-shirts. I'm going to do USSD. I'm going to build an app. I'm going to do a website or whatever it is. You share my information out there, write articles on LinkedIn, right, and post whatever I do on Twitter or any social media platform. All of that forms a constituent of, how you might, relate with all of these sort of like different customer segmentations. And one of the things you would come to also realize is that for quite a number of these customer segments, not all of them will buy today. There are some of them who are like laggards. They would only buy later, but they just really want to see, are people buying this yet? So in even all of those relationships, you want to sort of like really focus on them too, a bit more silently, because they will still be seeing your ad or your messages or whatever it is that you are promising that you have created or that you sell or that you do, because they are all watching quietly. Eventually, when the time is up, if you've been doing your customer relationship very well, there'll be no other choice, but you'll be the brand that comes up in mind. It's as interesting and commemorative as when you're driving and then you see, I think possibly in the streets of where we have the Flagstaff House in Accra, you'd get to see sometimes they have these repetitive boards that shows, like that sort of imagery should always remind us that the relationship never stops, whether your product, in most cases, even before your product is ready, right? You've got to still have a relationship, start really getting yourself out there, start writing something, start sharing something, create the pages and so on and so forth. And again, we'll come to see how all of this plays into licensing and all of that, because there are cases still in court where it's become pretty clear on who is going to win, because when we trace who started the conversation or who started the idea, all of these little things comes together to say, oh, we have a timestamp proving that he or she or they started talking about the idea 5 years ago. So then the one who claims that they have a license to then give out and that they are suing the other one to then say they've infringed on their license or on their IP, maybe they don't really, own it, because they probably might have copied from them. And that they just stole the idea, because they might have seen the post, although the first post is about 2 years away from the next post. They might have seen it, they took advantage, they had the money, went to do all the legal things around it, and now they want to eat the lunch of the other brand, right? So, whilst we are saying all of this, just really open your imagination in and around why it's necessary to sort of know your customers, start having a relationship with them, start telling them about what you do, even before you're ready. You don't need to wait till everything is set, right? And I think one of the things I have shared with quite a number of people in my circle, when they sometimes refer to some of the things some of us have been working on, which have still not really come to the market yet, is that I just really remind them to say, you know what, just take it easy. You're not promising anybody anything yet. You're just telling them what you want to build. There's no crime, right? Just tell people about it. Just share what it is that you're trying to create. And by the time you are ready, at least they know you ahead of time. Then we talk about the whole channels thing. How are they going to receive your offering? What are you going to serve them? How are they going to get it? So you've got to think about all of it. If it's a physical item, how are they getting it? Is it bulky? Is it tiny? What is the volume of space it occupies? What is the size? What is the weight of it? Is it digital? If it's digital, how is it going to be moved? Is it going over the internet directly? Is it USSD? Is it by transmission? Can people copy it? Is it going through Bluetooth? Infrared is not dead anyway, but is it going through Wi-Fi and so on? You've got to think about all of that. You're done. How is it going to go out there? Then once it's about to go out there, we'll get to talk about that side too, in terms of which sort of partners you're going to interact with and stuff. And I think those are some of the areas that would really bring in the interfacing for why, if you have the opportunity and you have the resources to get a license or start a license sort of a program for your brand or yourself, you've got to start as soon as possible, because it takes time and it takes money to establish that, so they don't take advantage of it. So wrapping up on the channels part, you're fundamentally going to have to look through the whole idea of, how they are, reaching you, or how you're reaching them, to integrate the whole idea that you found them, you've had a relationship with them. Now they're interested in your offerings. They want to get it. How do they get it? You've got to think about all of that. And which one is the most cost-effective ones, which ones work best by way of guarding your idea, ensuring the quality of delivery, and so on and so forth. So the scope, can be so huge and big that if we started to go into it, we might just really narrow down into one particular example. So if you wanted to talk about the detergent thing, right? And your idea is to sell the detergent solidly, and not that they'll buy the container, the funny analogy of they buying a container and getting a refill, of which we've seen some models elsewhere, but they'll be buying it solidly. It fundamentally means that detergent has to move. Whom is it, or is it going to go to wholesalers, and wholesalers are selling to retailers and so on? And what are you going to put in place to ensure that when they receive it, not in the bad state that you don't want it to be, and that they stick to the way it is? And what are you also going to put in place to ensure that the item is not breached? What are you going to put in place to ensure that it's not copied, and so on and so forth? How can you trace it? If you see a copy of your item in the market, how can you distinguish between them? Is it some code you have in there? Is it some USSD service that when people buy your stuff, they have to enter USSD to verify that it's original, and then every product has a unique code and all of that? Or do you have some sort of a watermark, a logo that is difficult to reproduce? Like, you've got to think about all of that, all right? Now let's talk about key activities. So by the time you've thought about your offering, who your customer segments are going to be, you've thought about the relationship you want to have with them, you've thought about all of that. Then you've also thought about how they're going to receive your item or service or product. You're not thinking, what do I have to do now? In the what do I have to do now, we jump into the key activities. You've got to really break down all the things that you're looking forward to doing because of your offering, because of the customer segmentation, because of the channels and so on. You come up with a very tall list. And in this list, you would also come to then realize, okay, whilst you're doing this, or you're going to do a particular activity relating to that, you want to either get a license depending on what industry you are into, or that you would want to also look into the whole idea of you have to create, or would want to create, a whole licensing thing on standby for people to be able to go through the process. You've got to think about all of that. And this is where it starts to get exciting. The very moment you get into your key activities, and like I've said before, I'm just really going to be narrowing down all the things I say down related to licensing so that we are addressing the issues. So let's say you have a business, you found your unique selling proposition, your USP or your value, is key. You've done all of that. You've taken second opinions. You've subjected it to community feedback and all of that with people. And they've said, oh, this is awesome, it's going to do well, and all of that. Now, look at your key activities. You look at your, customer relationships. Then you ask yourself, if you had a license to offer, or you had a way for people to apply for licenses, should you not really start considering that as part of your customer relationships and all? That is, if you think you would, right? Or that if you think that maybe you don't even want to hint on the idea that you intend to give out licenses for use for what you do, it should be part of your relationship strategy to then say, at some point in the future on our website, you can actually click a button that says apply for a license. or that you have a mailing sort of a service where people can write a letter. I'm not sure if people still would want to write letters because times have really changed. Write a letter to apply, but it depends on the industry. It depends on the industry. So let's not belittle it. In some industries, the best would be to go with a letter because everything has to be written. Emails will not even pass. Your SMSs and your WhatsApp messages are considered not valid per the terms of the license or the business dealings in that industry. So are they going to write to you or are they going to send emails and all? All of that should have been thought through because that means that in your key activities, you have to start thinking about all of those ahead of time to say, because we're going to do this, people will click this button to request for a license later on in 3-5 years down the line. We've thought about that too. So that is in our third year or second year and a half. That's when we start to talk about that in our communications. So people know that they can do what we are doing without necessarily starting from scratch. We can give them a license to do all of that and so on. Then you get into the key resources. By the time you've done your key activities, some heads up will be coming up concerning elements of infrastructure. And mostly key activities will just be pointing to the key activities, key resources, key partners that are pointing to the idea of infrastructure or things that you actually want to do or things that you sort of like need to get together. It comes mostly in the idea of physicals, more so. So by the time you've listed your key activities, it's a bit clearer in terms of what sort of resources you're going to need to be able to do what it is that you're going to do here or going to offer to your customers. So on a key resources part, you're looking at what key resources does your value proposition require? Even your distribution channels, your customer relationship, and then we'll come to the revenue streams. What sort of resources would you need to be able to pull all of that off? Because in some cases, if not for a lot of cases, if you're going to do even the customer segmentation identification, you might have to use certain research tools out there to sort of find out, which sort of customers use what product, and all of those elements would form into your key resources because then that would help you know them. A typical thing is we used to use Facebook's demographic service, now Meta, to just really try and identify what idea of numbers are in and around certain specific demographics in certain countries. Because by the time you finish doing the idea of your customer segmentation, what you'd come down to would be more of demographics. And demographics is a wide thing. You start narrowing down the idea of age, gender, activities like job, what they work or where they work, and what they do, where they stay, which country, which region, and all. Now we're able to use that to be able to sort of like narrow down, because for every parameter you add to that sort of scoping, the Meta service gives you a feedback on that. Now, I'm not sure if they've adjusted that all too recently, but I would want to believe they will still give you some sort of a heads up in terms of what numbers your reach could be. So there are some of these resources out there that you might be able to use to say, do your customer segmentation and all of that stuff to start finding them and all. In some cases, you can do a poll to sort of like really see what people would say as well, and just really put it out there on social media, or you might do some Google form or type form to be able to just really see who they are and what they do and all of that stuff. If you come to the customer relationship, it will be similar. There will be resources in here that you can use. You start listing them there. You just really start putting them there. What are you going to need to be able to communicate very well to them and just get their attention and share with them what it is that you do or seek to do, right? So you list them here. Then, of course, the channels. What resources are you going to need? If you're into the physicals, are you buying your own cars to distribute, or are you using some mopeds or tricycles? Or are you going to be working with delivery companies and all? And of course, in all of this, you're looking at the idea of licensing, because we've seen cases where businesses came up with an idea, or a startup came up with an idea. They just went even as out as going to do a customer survey, and just the idea of they not thinking about the concept that there is only a certain amount of information you just have to share when you are doing a poll. They probably might have ended up sharing so much. By the time they realize the customer segments they are targeting, one of them is already running with the idea. It's not registered, it's nothing. It turns into a gray area by the time you're done, they are just running with it, right? It doesn't also mean you shouldn't tell people about your idea, but I think that you definitely have to know how to share it, what to say, what not to say, because sometimes I think that it might not be necessary to share the trade secrets. We'll talk about those probably later on as we move in there. And of course, in the customer relationship aspect, you might want to talk to a radio station, a TV station, you're doing a publication, or you're sharing some diagram or a post out there. You've got to screen it. Are you sharing more than it's needed? Because all of this are forming the baseline for what it is that you do and whether you'll be able to build a very solid license program for your business or startup or entity. Because if you started and you're already sharing schematics, very detailed schematics, you're sharing your equation, you're sharing a list of all the ingredients. Oh, we are a green company. We love Earth. We just want to keep everything green. Everybody see our list of ingredients. We love all of you so much. So you shared everything. Okay, that's fine. But people are going to copy. So you would also come to realize that even with the FDA, and we had the chance to work with the FDA for a very solid 1 year, it was a brutal thing in Ghana. The laws allow you to hide some of your key and critical ingredients and share only the sort of like common ingredients, which you don't mind sharing. I think as of the time we're dealing with them in, I think 2011, you could share up to like, I think 10 of them if you wanted to. And then you can hide the ones that you don't want to share. But those could be things that the FDB might ask you to say, tell us like what's unique about this. So they would know some of them, right? But in all of this, the FDA also has a promising statement in the legal clauses that is saying that they won't share this, they won't give this to everybody and anybody. But it's your idea, it's your business. You want to be careful what you share and what not to share. And again, when we get to trade secrets, we probably might touch on all of those as well. But I'm still mentioning all of this because the idea is that the foundation that you lay with your business model canvas forms a very strong thing for what it is that your business will be able to end up doing when it comes to licensing. Because if you're saying you're going to be licensing stuff, but right from the very early days, you've shared everything, or that you've made your business such that there's not any special thing about it anymore, then we're not going to pay for your license. When we buy one of your stuff, we are good to go. We can tweak it and move on, so you want to sort of be very careful with that. And then I think I mentioned the idea of deliveries. So in cases where you have certain specific delivery companies working with you, or you have a certain medium that your services will flow through, it could be a certain server somewhere, or it might be another agent which would interface with your item before it gets to market. What are you putting in place to ensure that your item is safe? It can be tampered with and so on. And if it's tampered with, the customer can tell and report it. And is there a reporting channel back to the customer relationship thing? So again, when you look at the relationship part, this area can actually help you build a whole reporting thing for your licensing breach. If your licensing is breached somewhere, how do people report it back to you, right? So, sorry. By the time we are done, you get to realize again strongly why you need to really pay attention to your business model canvas, because the customer segment that you focused on and the relationship you established with them, not just for the way they can order for the item or buy the product, but that they can also report. If they saw that the product has been tampered with, or the results that you promised them is not what they got, can they report it and report it safely without being intimidated, or that your customer service support people intimidating them or not even allowing them to speak, right? You've got to build all of that ahead of time so that you can know if something is happening to your product, which would infringe on your license and stuff like that. You want to really look at all of that. So by the time you realize everything in here talks to each other, linking you to your key partners to then say, some of the things I want to do as a business or a startup, I don't think I can do all of them. Who and what are the type of other partners out there that can actually help me do this, right? You want to start finding them. You make a list of all of them in the various areas. There are certain partners who already have their customers that you already want. They have them in abundance. They are probably serving them in a certain way, but you are coming them to serve them in another way. It might be an auxiliary service or an incremental service or a service booster or maybe the customer is selling food, right? They obviously will not be producing a certain type of packaging that dissolves after 3 days. Or now we've seen packages that are edible. It's part of the food. So we serve you with an edible Fantoffee spoon. I've seen one of those. I think it was in Singapore, Malaysia. They've got some of these interesting things, right? So the food business will not necessarily be producing that, but you are going to produce that stuff. They're going to be your partner because you're promising them a new experience, which will augment their services, or their services would augment and complement yours. Again, right from the word go, you are thinking about, okay, now when my service or my product or my concept interfaces with them, how am I going to ensure that they don't breach or excessively go out there and produce this thing way ahead of time? So you want to get your acts right, even on your first interactions with them, because we've seen cases where startups come up with an idea, they find a partner that can do something for them, by them, to complement what it is that they are doing, or they are complementing the other business such that it would help them earn more revenue, or they'll gain more customers and all. And they just say, just do a demo for us. They do a demo and they go like, you hear from us, and they never hear from them again. And then the next thing we know, 2 years down the line, they're doing it. Like, what are you going to do to ensure that you don't end up excessively, getting yourself in that? Because there are some cases where by the time you're about signing that MOU for the licensing or the first purchase or the first order, you may or might be required to actually share a bit more about what makes your offering very unique, because they want to know. And how would you do that? How do you share that? We hope that we'll be able to touch on all of this. So at the key partners area, you're looking at who the key partners are, the key resources and the partners that you need to acquire to be able to get those resources that you need. It might be that certain ingredients that you need, you can't produce them yourself. Which partners can provide that? How do you interface with them? You are ordering from them. They might also have a license. How does their license affect yours as well? Now, that's an area I want to touch on briefly, because I think that quite a number of times we've done the survey, we've realized it's in and around about 18% of people that read terms and conditions and policies with products. Like, you go there and it says, do you agree? I agree, sign off. Like, a lot of us don't read the stuff, right? But I think it will be key when you start interfacing with other partners. If it means you have to take a day to read every single fine print in there. If the print is not clear, request for a bigger one. We've interfaced with some businesses over the past 5 years where we had to request for a much more extensive document, because then, according to the partner that was providing us with that terms and conditions, they just said, we just realized people don't read them, so we did a summarized version, right? But for some of us, we like the fine print. So by going through them, we realized, no, wait, this is not everything. There might be something more. So when we requested for it, they brought us a whole booklet. Yeah, this is it. You want the details? Yes, take it. It's 500 pages. So it will be, in my opinion, it will be worth reading it. Or if you have a legal team, it will be worth them focusing, time, just getting used to what is in there, because there are quite a lot of what we call extended action or extended clauses, where you think that you had a certain concept in mind to say, oh, per my licensing, you can do this, you can do that. But you're also interfacing with a partner who is saying, no, you're going to use something of mine. You can't do this. You want to be ready to ensure that you know all of that ahead of time, to extend those terms in your licensing as well. Because if you don't take care, you'd rather be the one in trouble, because the licensee that you're dealing with, you told them it's fine, they can do that. God forbid, if it gets into court, they will just state, this is what we signed to. The current license that we are dealing with said that we can do this. Then the party that you are interfacing with will then say, no, this is not what we agreed to. No, we're suing you. You owe us. And guess what? You pay. You would have to pay with your hard-earned money. Yeah, you pay for it. So you need to know the partners you're dealing with. You need to know what legal terms, what terms and conditions that they have. Don't be pushed. We've seen cases where brands sort of like bully the other party to sign. They say, oh, the offer is standing for only 2 days. if you don't sign this before that time, we're sorry, but we can't do business. I would say be careful. Because I think in most of those scenarios that we've seen, it's just a simple act of bullying, just trying to force you to put your hand to a term and condition that you've not taken time to do proper due diligence on. In most cases, it's also a sign that whatever relationship or partnership you're about to go into may not necessarily be healthy, because if the legal team is not ready to give you time to read and understand what it is that is happening, including but not limited to the idea of you yourself as an entity, like you as a person, the founder, the CEO, the COO, whatever it is that you are. The legal team in most cases might have been familiar with those terms because they are used to what the clauses are supposed to be. And in most cases, they might raise a flag that, oh, if there's any clause, we can seek for a redress later on, of which mostly at the latter part of the seek for redress in the clauses might raise to say that if at any point in the future, you can, raise a counter to then say that this is what you fundamentally believe in, or more so that this is what we are doing, right? And that this is what we are all sticking to. But if you don't agree, you're seeking for a redress in a particular cause, in most of the legal terms, the partners would have written a term that states that by seeking for, say, a redress on clause 8 or clause 9 or 10, it does not necessarily violate the 2 or the 1 or the 15 or the 21st clause and so on. So it means you should have taken time to satisfy yourself with the terms and conditions thereof, right? So please do take note, because it's serious business. It's not a walk in the park. Take your time, read them. One of the things you probably could do as part of a new hobby or a new interest that you found, close and related to reading of manuals, of which a lot of people probably don't read manuals, is to then say, I have a new hobby now. I just love reading terms and conditions of companies, because there's just so many of them out there that a lot of us have signed up to for the past probably 20, 30, 40 years that we've never taken time to read any of them, right? So please be very interested at that. I'll move now into the area of cost structure and all of that. So by the time you're getting to cost structure, you've been able to identify your offerings and what's unique about what you're doing. You know your customer segmentation. You have a clear idea about the relationship you have with them. You also have the idea of the channels and how they're going to get your offering and how you're going to reach them. You know your key activities and key resources. You have a fair idea about who your partners are going to be and the sort of relationship you're having with them, whether they are augmenting you or complementing you, or if you're complementing them, and the terms and conditions that they have. By then, you have a clear understanding of, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me, because for these resources that I'll need, it costs me this amount. You also have a fair idea of, okay, to relate with these customers in this space and the platforms that they are at, it costs this amount of money per click, or this amount of cash per impression for me to be seen by them. You know that this is how much it will cost me to deliver the service. If they click and they start downloading, maybe because they're using their own internet, as for the receiving, it's not on me, it's a customer that pays for it. But we've also seen some businesses lately where the cost is really on you, the business owner. You pay for that service in terms of the delivery. All of that will come in here, and all of that. Typical example might be even in the IT space, where if I use the app directly, I'm using my own internet. If I go on the USSD service, for every single one of those USSD services, you, the startup, you're paying for it. You have to pay for every single one of them. And in most cases, it's not forgiving at all. If the USSD service went through successfully, you pay. If it didn't go through, you would pay. It's just like SMS as well. In most cases, you send an SMS trying to relate to a customer. Whether the SMS gets delivered or not, you're paying. It's just how some of those spaces are. So by then, by the time you get into the cost and structures, part of the business model canvas, you have a very fair idea of what costs you are standing with, right? Including but not limited to physical items, like if you're going to necessarily need an office. I just hope that you will not necessarily need an office, because times are changing. Elements like computers or physical items, whatever it is that you need to get your offering ready to serve your customers, you have done all the numbers on it to know that this is how much it costs me. So by the time you know the costs and you know exactly what the most important costs are and what costs are inherent and transferable, because some of the costs will not be transferable, it depends on your business. In some cases, a business owner would have said, you know what, when it comes to the cost of the license, maybe I'm getting a license from BOG or whatever it is, I can't share it or send it to the customer because it's just so much that if you started trying to rake your money back, you can't sell because the price is so high. If you share it by the initial amount of customers that you're actually going to have, you can't really do all of that. You can't sell because it's just too expensive. All right, I'm just probably going to see, I think I see people sharing a few questions here and there. Just a second before I just wrap up with a cost area, because that will be very key for what we are doing. Just a second. Just a second. I think on our Zoom, okay. Let me be sure. So we have, yeah, I think someone was asking if it's the name of the website is Failori, as in failure and Ori. So just really wanted to touch on that briefly, so that we don't miss that. Yeah, so that is that. Any other one that I am missing? Just want to be sure I am not missing that. So it's failori.com. Let me see if I can share that with the team, and then they can share it with you as well. But all of that will be added to the presentation as well. So no fears at all when the time comes for us to share the PowerPoint presentation, because I know quite a number of us will be requesting for it. Can we please get a slide? Yeah, we get that a lot. So we'll definitely share that with everybody, so we have it. Is there any other question I am missing? I just want to be sure. Any one of those? Okay. All right, then I guess I would go on then. I guess I'll go on then. All right, cool. So let's continue from here. All right, so now we are at the costs area. So cost and structure. So by the time you're here, you know everything fundamentally about what it is that you're going to do, your offerings, your customer segment, everything. So you know your costs, you've been able to tally it together. And at this point, we'll say don't leave anything to chance, because then in some cases, we've seen the idea of startups or businesses being able to distinguish between costs that they can extend to customers, costs that they can extend to licensees, and then costs that they know they can deal with across the per annums and then the yearly and all, because they realize some of them are so huge. If you wanted to offer it out there, even to the customer or even the licensee, then you won't get a lot of people signing up, because they'll just feel, no, the license is too expensive and your business cannot grow as fast as you thought or think that you wanted it to be. So you've got to be quite strategic about what it is that you'll be carrying on to the customer, because that will come to affect the pricing tag on what it is that you are selling, because it's based on, or it's going to be based on the cost that you'd come to then define that, oh, this is how much I'm selling it for. And we know fundamentally, you've got to know your selling price, and your cost. And then of course you do the subtraction, then you know that, okay, this is how much I made as profits. Of course, we'll jump into the part of the revenue stream. So how are you going to make money? And that is also where we can talk about the idea of the product itself, the item itself, and then also you being able to make money from licenses or your license and all of that stuff, right? So fundamentally, the very moment we start to talk about your revenue, we want to talk about the idea of, what value are your customers really willing to pay? That is a very, very important thing. Never assume that because you found some very powerful offering that any amount of money you put out there, people will be willing to pay. In quite a number of cases, that also comes into the idea of even researching to see which or what are the closest selling brands and how much are they selling for? And why are you going to sell above, below, or at the same price? You want to just really do your research, and of course that really ties into the idea of what are your customers already paying for related and close services to what it is that you're actually trying to sell or give them out there, and how would they prefer to pay for it. That's also very, very key, because you'd realize that if you're able to identify the areas and the segments or places where the customers will be doing the payment through, that can increase the cost of the item or that can reduce the cost of the item. And in quite a number of cases too, the place and the point of payment could be a place where you want to also pay attention to whether your concept of your licensing can be augmented or can be enhanced, or that it can also be somewhat breached as well, because it's at a point of where they are paying for that. Whoever is collecting the money would then be thinking, interesting. People come here paying for this service, and I think for the past 1 month, we received 1.2 million Ghana cedis on this. What is this product? What does it do? Can I clone it? Can I copy it? Can I do something that gives me an edge, and all of that, so that I can rub shoulders with these people, these entities, and also take the 1.2 million for myself? So you wanna pay attention to all of that. The whole idea about the business model canvas is that don't leave anything to chance. Just really look as deep as possible as you can look. Just research, just go very deep, because everything counts. Like, don't leave anything to chance. Just be as deep as you can, right? And then of course you also come to realize that where they are paying could make the access even to your services seamless or not. And hence we're seeing quite a number of technologies coming out there in the names of mobile money, being able to pay directly via bank, making it very seamless for people to be able to pay, from wherever they are, to start offering for the service that you promise, or the product that you promise. Then you'd also come to realize something interesting, that again and again, every part of this talks to every part of your business model canvas, right? Because if you are relating to some customers and your customer segmentation is such that they are not even able to use a smartphone very well, all they can do is to pick calls. If you tell them to post a tweet, they can't. Or if you told them to pay via card, they don't have a card. It all comes all the way to affect your revenue stream as well. And by extension, you would also come to realize that it would affect your whole plan on whether you should license or not license, and so on and so forth, because then everything is tied in together, fundamentally. So we'll just be wrapping up here, but the last part I'll talk about has to do with the whole concept of sustainability, and the whole idea of how do you still keep the business running after you've done this whole business model canvas, and then you've now done your whole idea of, okay, now I've been able to structure out my customer segment. I know the relationship I want to have with them. I have a very clear idea of what sort of service that I'm offering. I know my activities. I know my key resources and key partners and so on. Fundamentally, after all of this, how do I ensure sustainability? And that's key. And that's also where you'd realize that licensing also would play a very major role in this, because in quite a number of cases, you might not be able to be everywhere at the same time, especially if you're dealing with physical products, right? If your services are probably in the digital space, even that, you can be everywhere. And I know sometimes we, the tech people, or those of us in the tech industry, might think, oh, it's an app, it's a web application, we can be everywhere. That statement can never be true every time. The reason being that the fact that you have a website doesn't necessarily mean that the customer segments that you are serving will be able to easily use even your website or seamlessly use the service. And in some cases, your services, though is digital and can be used everywhere, there'll be licensing issues, especially if you're in the space of the fintechs. You can just wake up anytime and just have an idea, oh, they can send money this way. And then go out there and start, doing something in Tanzania or South Africa because you think you're in Ghana, you can launch through the web and people will start using it and all. You would have to get a license. If you don't get a license before you launch there, you would learn a very, very interesting lesson, probably a painful one, that although you're in Ghana, you can be found, and all of that stuff. So do watch all of that as well when it comes to sustainability. You would have to look at everything, sustainability and business continuity and all of that. So I'll just really wrap up on this part and just really just touch on the part. So we'll move on to the next thing, which is the idea of business meeting tech. Now let's talk about just a quick recap on the business model canvas. So we've been able to touch on the idea of the concept of you needing to know what your unique selling proposition is, your USP. What are you offering? You need to know who your customer segments are, your customer relationship, your customer distribution and channels, your key activities, your key resources, key partners, your costs, how much it would also even cost you to get a license for yourself. And by the time you are done, based on all the costs and all that has gone into you being able to do a proof of concept of your idea, the MVP, or the early samples and all. And if someone is coming for a license, by extension, to some degree, depending on what you're doing, the cost you'd have incurred in being able to get that far, to even get a licensing program for your business or startup, would also be extended into the cost as well, in terms of how much people would have to pay to be able to get a license. And sometimes too, we have an extended cost because of a certain license you needed to get from, say, the FDB or FDA, now FDA, or whatever other licensing authority in whatever space that you operate. Now that also extends into the cost, because then you might have to pick a certain part of all of that cost and start offsetting in your sales to then say that we intend to amortize our cost of acquiring a license over a period and just be offsetting them. So what is the percentage? What are the numbers that you want to do to be able to just be shoving off that cost and so on and so forth? In some cases, you would also come to learn that even in the first investments, some people would write it as part of their dealings in the what I probably might term as a counter term sheet, or the term sheet feedback, because you would have received a term sheet from the investors to then say, oh, we're interested in your idea. We've seen what you're trying to do. And these are our terms. You might also reply them and say, yeah, I realize you guys wanted to put in $10,000, but we've already spent about 78,000 USD in getting this far. We're sorry, but you might have to up the game. If not, that 10,000, it doesn't really take us any far. The only way you're able to have those conversations is because you've been able to deal with your business model canvas very well, and you're really watching everything. You did all your research. That's even if you've not come to market yet, you've done all your research to know how much it's cost your competitors or people in your sector or industry to get to where they've gotten to be able to have a few markup lines to say, this is how much we think it will cost us based on this other business and that other business and so on and so forth. And in some cases, we've seen the luxury of startups or businesses then taking advantage of the idea that the current investor into the business even probably has a relationship with another business that they've invested in who has a license to operate in that sector. I mean, you have to watch all of these things as well to make a decision on how you're going to go out there, So we'll probably touch on some of those when we get to the concepts of merger and acquisition, or do you want to go IP, or like what's your strategy, for real with what you're trying to do, or you're just going to do Abba and Sons and that's all you want to do. So you're not probably going to concern yourself with any of these things. Just do your 2 CD sales and 10 50 Ghana sales and just move on. What's your plan? We'll get there. And then of course we spoke about revenue, how much you would how much you could actually license and contribute to your return on investment or valuation. All of that also comes into effect what you're doing. Then we spoke lastly about sustainability and continuity. In most cases, it's not part of what we'll talk about in business model canvassing or what you should consider in your business, but it has become key for us to mention it because it sort of triggered the whole mentality of how will this business exist in the next 5, 10, 20 years? What are you going to put in place to ensure that? And sometimes this whole licensing thing will be your panacea to ensure that even if your own very branch or your own very home build is not moving out massively out there, that you have a licensing plan on standby to then say, you know what, I've just realized that I can't be in this other 17, 20 something, 30 something countries, but I want to create a licensing program, and it's so solid, and it's going to be solid because I have done all of this. I know what could go on out there. I know what I'm offering. I know my customers. I know my key things, right? So then your sustainability would be that it's actually your licensing program, and that's all you feed from. And whoever takes a license, they are in for the next 10, 20, 25, 30 years. It depends on your terms and what the law allows in those jurisdictions, because there have been cases where, say in Ghana, the law might have said, if you issue a license out there for this particular industry, it lasts for 10 years. This other industry is 20, but in the home country of where you are offering the license, it might be a counter or even an extension. Maybe that for that industry, they do 5 or they do 10 or they do 50, so you have to just like really know all of that and take it into consideration for your sustainability and continuity strategy for your business model canvas. Now let's talk some technology and business meeting law. So we'll touch on this. So in most cases, by the time you are thinking about your idea, quite a number of startups would not even have decided whether they are going to focus on merger and acquisition, right? Merger and acquisition, fundamentally, that they right from the very first day they thought about the idea, or probably after they thought about it a while, they just realized, you know what, we can't compete in this thing. We are just positioning ourselves so that we can be acquired by Nestle, or that we can be acquired by Google, or that we can be acquired by Microsoft, and so on. Your research should have pointed you in that area, because you'd come to learn that some fights are better won by just saying, you know what, I can't fight you. Let me join you. Let's fight the other people. So you have to decide, and you need to know what it is that you're into, know how big the addressable market is, know your TAM, SAN, and all of that stuff. And just say, you know what, I know what we are capable of. The realisticity is that we know that we can only probably deal with one region, not even a country, one region, because of how the services or how the product is. We can't go all too that much far. So we think that we are positioning ourselves to be acquired at least within the next 5 years. Now, guess what? That actually affects everything that you would do, because in the merger and acquisition approach and strategy, you need to think about all of that to then say, because we'll be acquired, our business interfacing should be ready for the parent brands. So you would enlist a number of the parent brands. Let's say it's a digital thing. You've created, let me pick an interesting service, just creating one on the spot, right? So you've created something that allows people to verify if the email they received is really legit, like if it's original and it's not some AI or some fraudsters putting it together. I personally haven't seen anything like that solidly, right? But let's say you've come up with something like that. You realize that people already have email services that they're using. They're using Gmail, they're using Yahoo, and so on, right? And you realize that you will not be able to compete. So you decided, I'm going to go merger and acquisition. My strategy is to build this, and then within the next 1-2 years, we want to be acquired. We want to be acquired. So then, how do we build this so that by the time we are ready to be acquired, it's so easy for the parent brand to sort of like acquire us? It means that you need to understand the protocols of the parent brand. So how does SMTP or the mail servers for Yahoo, Google, and so on, how do they work? There are a lot of servers out there which are private, and there are mail services, and the mail servers and servers that they use, how do they also work with emails and email screening? Are you building a plugin? Are you building some augmented service? You have to understand that space before you even go ahead and even launch your product, because if you don't do that, you'll just be playing a ball of like indecisiveness. You're not sure whether you are building this to go initial public offering or merger and acquisition, or are you franchising, or are you licensing, or Do you want to go the whole idea of compliant partner or a compliance partner? Or are you doing white labeling, where brands are fundamentally approaching you, and your licensing in the white labeling fundamentally says, yeah, you use my license, but guess what? The only thing you do is you have to put somewhere tiny down there on your product or on the website that powered by AZY company, right? But you can change the logo, you can change the colors, you can change the name. It doesn't matter, but you have to put my powered by AZY company there. Or in some cases, the brand would have strictly stated clearly that, okay, so we've built this, we've created this, but this ingredient you can't remove. You can't change or take that ingredient out. The very moment you take that ingredient out, you violated the rule of engagement or the licensing thing. Or they then say, for every time that you use our services, you have to hit this API before you hit the other API. So there's a chain of API series you want to touch before you get to the main service. If there is ever a record that a transaction came through from your server, from your end of which we're able to track, and it didn't hit this specific API before coming, you violated it, and that there are penalties or there are things you need to pay for, there are fines and so on. All of this would have to have been thought through. Packaging. Let's say you've been able to do something, but it fundamentally says that the item should never be put in a black polythene bag. I'm not sure how someone can enforce that compliance, but let's just say it's part of your brand identity and what it is that you've decided to do with your licensing terms. What are you going to put in place to ensure that the item cannot be put in a black poly bag? I mean, it's just arbitrary, right? I don't think anybody has any of those clauses out there. It's just arbitrary. So you have to have thought about all of that, the concepts of franchise and all. Like, what do you want to do? Are you going to do a franchise, and how are you going to ensure that your franchise is not breached and all? But our focus more will be on licensing. In all of this, what are you putting in place to ensure that if you're going to give a license and you're going to be acquired, what are the terms and conditions to protect your licensees? And what are the terms and conditions to protect, you yourself as a licensor when, you are now acquired, or when you go IPO and so on and so forth, right? You've got to think about all of this ahead of time to then say, this is my plan, this is my approach, and I think this is what would work for me. You should have thought through on all of that before we proceed to putting the product out there. Then we'll move to things to watch out for. And I think we've mentioned that before, so I'll not really go so much into this. The ideal thing would have been if this was a purely legal session, then we'll go into some of the sample clauses and all. But like I've said, the acts and the laws and the legislative instruments are out there. They are very public for you to be able to have access to read on them and read about them. So please know that in law, know the business that you are into, know your competitors. And I think all of this comes down to research. You've got to find out, you've got to use the research tools. I think we'll mention some of them at some tail part of the session, just to get familiar with what you can do and what is out there for you and what is not out there for you. You have to know these things, right? And of course, know thy tech. If you're going to use some sort of technology in your business that gives you an edge in the marketplace, you need to know exactly what goes on in that technology to then say, this is what makes me unique, or this is what gives me an edge in the marketplace. And this is why I think that when I go into licensing my items, it's going to be a very huge edge for me or an advantage for me. Then we get into areas of, I think we've mentioned some of these, which is the what, in the end, what can you license and what can you not license, and so on and so forth. So like I also mentioned before, iSpace has done sessions on patenting and the idea of how you can patent. I think we did some also locally here, but then they have other sessions as well that others also treated the whole subject of patenting. Be very interested. And I think that there is no way you treat patenting without talking about copywriting and the other things that are patentable or copyrightable and so on and so forth. So the idea of what can you patent, images, computer programs or softwares, songs or media files, recipes, or a certain way of doing certain specific things or a certain thing. designs or a certain design approach, that people could use or do, or that you do, which is unique and very different in a way that it's not so easy for anybody to have come up with. You can come up with your own licensing on that. Let's just say you found a way to print to say a t-shirt without necessarily having the t-shirt down. The person can actually be wearing the shirt and they walk through something and they print on it. I haven't seen one before. If anybody has, please do share with me. And people want to use that technology, or they want to take advantage of it and just say, we've seen this thing. We think it will be a very cool thing. People can come for programs, and when they come, we don't even need to share any t-shirts. They can just walk through this thing that someone created, and yeah, it prints for them. And that's it. Just stand there for like 2 minutes and they are done. So every 2 minutes, you can do that. If you have something like that, you want to license it out, you design the whole concepts and all of that stuff, you can license it. But the trick is that in most cases, we've come to realize that there is almost no way where you're going to be able to go ahead and license a technology without going to do the needful, which is getting a patent or getting proper copyright, on the said item that you're saying that you fundamentally have the power over to be able to license, because it really comes down to the idea of how do you also protect what it is that you claim that you are able to give a license on or for. So the element of patenting and copywriting becomes very, very, very critical for your whole process, in terms of what you can license out there or not. All right. So let me check. I think there was someone sending a chat question in the chat here. Okay, I think that is all. I just wanted to be sure. Great point. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, there's another question there. All right, cool. So the idea is that you want to have a licensing program where you are the licensor, or you hold some sort of control over the item. It's going to be key that you have those sort of things in place. So do you have a patent? Do you have a copyright on the said thing? And I think that at some point we also spend time talking about the idea of what you would want to patent, or what you shouldn't even bother patenting, because by patenting it, you also lose your grounds, or that you would have totally lost your edge in the marketplace. We gave an example during our presentation, I think it was at KNUST, where we said, if you look at what Google has done, and not just Google, quite a number of brands out there who decided that, you know what, we're not going to go get a patent on this, or we're not going to do a copyright on this. We're just going to hide how this is done, and nobody can have access to it. And that's just it. And then we just sell the products, and their whole licensing is fundamentally the sales of the item. That's it. You want to do what they're doing, just go and use the endpoint, which in our tech thing is an API, which would have been built, or some server which have been built in a way that you can just say, you want to use the services, no worries. You can just really go there and, have access to their services digitally by signing up for the API. And I think we would see some of those models as well. You see quite a number of success stories and failed stories from Phil Laurie. So you have to do your research to know what really works out for you, right? To then say, okay, for what I have created and for what I have done, my best bet here is that if I even license it, I'm finished, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to keep up with a protection and all of that stuff. So fundamentally, we need to sort of like really watch out on what we actually can patent and not patent and all of that stuff. So we just really quickly, move through the other elements just to like really wrap up in a bit, because I think that fundamentally we've spoken about all the key points. So I think at this point, we'll just like really go over very quickly. So I mentioned SOP. You can also decide to license an SOP, but it becomes a question of, is it an SOP that you have control over? Then when we get to the rights and responsibilities, in your terms and conditions, you have to really start looking into the idea of the right to use, right to sell, right to make, right to remake, right to commercialize, field of use, the right to sub-license or not sub-license, and right to ownership. In some cases, you would have that context of at what point do I own something, as far as your licensing is concerned and all of that stuff. Then we have elements of exclusivity and inclusivity or inclusiveness of whatever, license that you are issuing out there. What will be the elements of accessing and validity? I think we've spoken about that too, which is the duration of your license. Then we have liabilities. So when I come for the license, what are some of the liabilities that are on me? What are some of the liabilities that fall on you? You, the licensor, and me, the licensee. How does that relationship looks like? You have to define all of that. And what are the assignments and continuity clauses? I think we've also mentioned that as well, because by the time you do your business model canvas and everything, and then you've taken a look at your sustainability and continuity of your business, you should have drafted all of that into your terms and conditions for your licenses as well, to be sure that this is what it is, you've assigned this level of continuity of the license and so on and so forth. Then we have the due diligence or the diligent clauses, where you're also looking at the idea of how do you verify, both parties, how do both parties verify each other to then say, this is what is trending, or this is what really pertains when it comes to due diligence. You need to have, say, this level of clearance to be able to do whatever it is. And then in terms of the geographical coverage and limitations, again, I think we've touched on this whilst we're talking about all of that, the fundamentals on the rights to commercialize and monetize. You need to really know and understand the scope of the industry in which you are, the country or the terrain in which you are, and then, of course, the mode of payment and payouts. Again, we've mentioned the idea that by knowing your costs and then the way you intend to sell your product or issue out a license, you need to know, are you doing royalties or equity or saves, and then annual fees, if any of them. And then, of course, by the time you're doing all of this, you should have established a way by which you're going to get paid. What is the payment schedules and where are they going to pay? Is it bank transfer? How is it going to be done? Or for wherever the sales will go through, there's a portion already allotted for you at those places where the amount of monies are being collected from the customers or from the people that will be using the said service or product or technology. Then there are quite a number of examples of which, when we do share the slides, they are all there. We have some very interesting examples dating as back as 1922 all the way to now, where people created certain solutions and then they licensed it out and it got purchased by another brand. Those are also there for you to look into and all of that. And then there's quite a lot of them, plenty examples and all of that stuff. And then we have the final takeaways. So on the final takeaways, again, know your business, know the business model canvas, understand the fundamentals of, and again, permit me to use this word, the common sense of the law and common sense of the business. There are some things you are better off not even bothering licensing or even going to copyright. Your best bet would be that it's a trade secret. Nobody knows how it's done. And you guard that with your life. And it's probably a family secret, or the family has a policy on top of it. Whenever it's being done, it's only key members of the family that meets to do it. It's like a court and all of that. Again, it really comes down to what it is that you are into to be able to define that. And then the idea of, understanding the investors and then the attorneys that you would use, because in all of this, believe it or not, you're going to need a lawyer. You would need a lawyer. So if you don't have a lawyer friend, start establishing friendships in those sectors. On your LinkedIn pages, start reaching out to people who are lawyers, just get to know them. If there is any legal event that comes on, get close to those areas, get to know them and all of that stuff. So that is that. Now, before I bring it to a close, we've got things like the licensing databases, and we also have elements of licensing of or license issuers, which are in here in this country and around the world. We will put all of that together and share with iSpace. I would want to believe that iSpace has all your email addresses. So they would push probably the presentation to everybody so that you have the file, you have a list of all the databases and all of that. So that will be all from me for now. wrapping it up on the point of the idea that there is a whole licensing database. We've got a lot of them, but we'll share the file with you. So there's no cause for alarm at all. We've got ProQuest, Gale, Springer Link, and so on and so forth. And of course, the areas where you should do your research from on the idea of what is patented, you can go and check WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, to just know what is already out there, because that's also something. And again, we've touched on all of that massively when we mentioned the BMC, to say that whatever it is that you're trying to do, remember, no matter what, you are not the first person. There's always somebody out there that has done something very closely to that. So you want to check on that and just be sure that there is not something out there that you are about to infringe on, and get it right. All right, so that'll be all from me for now. I would hand the mic over to the iSpace team. I didn't know the time was flying that much. I was looking at the time, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is going so quickly. And all of that. So over to you, Gloria and the iSpace team. That'll be all from me for now. Questions, comments, I'll just hand the mic over to them now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I personally have a quick question.
Okay.
So I would like to find out what's the difference between franchising and licensing? Is there like a difference? Yeah, that's
Okay.
my question for now.
Okay. So I would pick it from the perspective of how much control that one would normally have, right? In the case of a franchise, and again, even in the franchise thing, it depends on the brand that is franchising, because I would probably pick those of us who are not familiar with, I think there's a movie in and around this also, with how McDonald's became what it is, or what it's become now. On the idea that when you're giving a franchise, and that's sort of like the perspective I want to pick it from, to then say that when you're giving a franchise out, in most cases, there is more than just saying, I've cleared you to go ahead and operate. There's a lot of involvement in how you're going to do it, what you have to do, the people even involved, the process. It has to be stuck to the letter. In licensing, what we've come to learn and see is that, yeah, you've been given a license to operate. There is a rudimentary set of things that you can do or not do, but there's quite a lot of room to operate and work. And I think that's where there is a risk of losing control when you focus only on licensing and not necessarily on the full process of the business. But the trick here also is that depending on your business and the level of effect you have in the market space, or how much control you have in the marketplace, in some cases, you can't do franchise. You can only do licensing because you want to give that room for people to operate. In some cases too, licensing will not be enough. You have to go a bit all out to then say, you know what, there is a license, but the license is for a franchise. So when you sign the license to operate in our name or in our brand, you go by these clear stipulated lines, including even the table type you would use, the door entry, how people would queue to get the item, how they would pay, how you deliver it, how you package it, how you would even handle the item. It has to be done exactly as is stated. Any breach on those terms would be a void to the law to then say, no, you violated what we agreed on, and all of that. So mostly would look at it from the perspective of control. On franchise, or in the franchise model, you have a lot of grab. You want to have as much control as possible. People have to do it exactly as you've told them to do. In licensing, it might have been written and all, but we're not necessarily gagging you by the neck to then say, do it exactly this way. Just make sure you don't breach this, don't breach this, don't breach that. Make sure you pay your money on time, and so on and so forth. There are other sub elements across licensing and franchising, but fundamentally, it's just really going to go down to the idea of control, how much control that one would give you as a licensor or the licensee, and of course, the counter. Yeah, I just hope this helps.
Yeah, that works. Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody has a question. I don't know if anybody has a question, but thank you all for joining today. At this point, I would love that we all put on our videos to take a quick shot. Emmanuel, if you can kindly
stop the screen sharing. Yeah.
stop
Okay.
the yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. I would like to see your faces, your beautiful faces, wherever you are. Winnie, Wisdom, Richard, Stephen, Bill, Irene. I'd like to see your faces.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Please, so I'll say that the next session will be on, I think, Monday. The time will be communicated. And the next session is on how to start your company around research. So the information on that will be shared with you. And then the recording for this session and other relevant information or document will be shared also with you. And I would like to use this opportunity to say thank you on behalf of iSpace for making time to be on this call. And then have a nice day.
Thank you too. Wish you a nice day as well.
Thank you, everyone.